All right, you're good to go then.
Well, good morning, everyone. This is a special demonstration and question and answer session for using the new Governing Board approved Emergency Solution Grant Homeless Prevention Assessment Tool. This tool should be made available to all of you. And if you do not have access to the tool, please reach out to Lauren or Brendan. I believe it's also posted on our website and our Slack channel and was attached through the email invitation. What we wanted to do this morning is just make sure you have a good sense of why we're using the tool, how to use the tool, and answer any questions you have. I'm going to turn to, I am the core entry consultant and written standards consultant for the East, but I've also been tasked with developing this tool for Governing Board approval. And so I'm going to look to Lauren and Brendan to help me answer questions I might not be able to answer since I am not an ESG HP provider myself, but I'm a technical assistance provider. The origin of using this assessment is that PADCED issued a requirement that by March 1st of this year, every CoC receiving ESG funding through the department would be using some sort of common assessment tool to prioritize households for ESG funding, specifically ESG homeless prevention funding. I will say that as a brief history of how we got to this moment and why the tool is not officially rolling out in this format until April 1st, is that this process, first of all, started last year, somewhat early in the pandemic, and certainly before we had an abundance of other homeless prevention funding coming in from multiple federal and state sources. But understanding that in the pandemic, more people were going to need homeless prevention rental assistance at some point, wanted to have a process in place in every CoC to prioritize households over others based on need and vulnerability. And so the Eastern PA CoC first adopted a variation of an HP assessment tool that was created and is used in the Western Balance of State CoC in Pennsylvania. But after careful review of that initial tool, I was asked to work with the Governing Board to streamline the tool for your use so that it is it's easier to use and helps you make more flexible decisions and is less dependent on the score to determine a specific funding amount, and more to help HP case managers just make accurate decisions about how much assistance is likely to be needed by a given household, and then to have a document of that decision through the assessment tool that you will be uploading into PAHMIS. And I'm going to demonstrate that whole process. The last thing I'll tell you as we go through the process is that it is our intention over the next few months to build this tool, which currently exists in Microsoft Word, Excel, into a workflow automatically in HMIS. And if you've ever used or seen the SSVF Homeless Prevention Assessment tool in HMIS, where you just literally click the buttons to answer yes or no, and the scoring points auto-populate and you get to a score at the end. Our vendor is working with our HMIS report designer, Mahendra, to build that into our system for you. Unfortunately, in the meantime, between now and then, it is a manual process of using the template we've provided, creating a copy in Excel and filling that out and then uploading it into PAHMIS. So before I walk through the process any further, I'd just like to ask two things. One, that everyone remains on mute so that our line is clear. And if you have questions or comments, please use the chat feature. And I'm going to ask Lauren if she would moderate that chat so that I can focus in this first part on the demonstration and make sure that all of your questions are answered. So first and foremost, and Lauren, I assume there are no initial questions yet?
Correct. No, but Brendan did put a link to the tool, the CoC website, where it's posted for folks if you want to copy and paste that in the chat. Copy and paste that for your own records.
Great, thank you. And thanks, Brendan. So first of all, this is actually, you're part 2 of a process for this new ESG HP prioritization system, because our coordinate entry specialists, whether they are at the 211 call center or in one of our 18 or so access sites in the community, have already done a pre-screening when people contact a coordinated entry, present as needing homeless prevention assistance as category 2 or possibly category 4, and they are screened with a brand new quick screen tool, which also exists outside of PAHMIS. It's an Excel pre-screening tool. In that case, we have one tool for each county because it's pre-coded to the AMI levels, and what that tool does is that our specialists will lead the head of household through a brief screening just to figure out if they're even eligible for an HP ESG or ESG CV project. And if they are eligible, they are referred to you through PAHMIS. And in fact, that Excel pre-screening tool is saved and uploaded to the client record. So if you as a HP case manager or provider are the email point of contact for your agency to receive referrals in HMIS, then from now on, you should be receiving an automated email alerting you that someone has been referred to you. And if not, and I'll show you what that would look like. So this is, I just sent this fake referral. The lead number is the client ID. So client ID in our system has been referred to your organization. And when you copy that client ID number, the first thing you would do would be to log into HMIS using the new login of Eastern Pennsylvania CoC work group. As I hope you know, that process started Wednesday. So no matter what kind of user you are, please log into the Eastern Pennsylvania CoC work group and then select your organization, at which point you can log in and search for the client that you've been referred to, or just go, which happens to be a fake client here, which I've already searched for, and see that, okay, they're actively enrolled in Connect to Home CE homeless prevention. And if I went to my provider dashboard, and I'm using a fake provider for demonstration purposes, but you would go to your provider dashboard and you should see the newest referral to Prevention Assistance Project or Rental Assistance Project, depending on how your ESG program is coded. Eventually, every ESG HP program will be coded as the service referral to a Prevention Assistance Project. That'll happen behind the scenes. You may also have noted recently that your provider dashboard has changed and the list of client referrals looks different, and you no longer see accepted or turned away. That's because we had a broken customization from the last version of Client Track pre-May 2021 that was showing you an improper dashboard. Now, and I know I'm doing a little sidebar, but I'm not, in case you haven't seen this. Now, when you're in your provider dashboard, whether you look at pending referrals in this list or click referrals to selected provider and look at pending referrals through the sub menu, what you see will be identical, and what you can do when you click the right fill-in box will be identical. So it no longer matters which of these two methods you use, either your dashboard or this sub menu. They're the same exact thing. So in this case, you've just received this referral to HP prevention. You can go in and see that some referral information. If our CE specialist had any notes for you, they would have added them here and you can read them. Ideally, then, we would really like all providers to be processing the outcome of direct service referrals, including homeless prevention. Date acknowledged is just the date you're reading it. If that's all you do is say, okay, I've got the referral, but I'm not going to be even engaging this referral till tomorrow or until they contact my agency, you would just hit save. And then at least we know that the referral's been acknowledged by you and it's not lost in the system. So you can see there's an acknowledgement date now of 4/1/2021. And then you'll have to go back in to update the referral outcome. And here are all the choices. So turn away is really not something we should ever see or use again. That's an outdated legacy element of client track. The ideal is to confirm the referral outcome when you get to the point of doing the HP enrollment, and then I'll go back and show you the tool for that. But when you're doing the actual project enrollment into your project, here are all the possible outcomes that we would like you to select from. And so if you did enroll someone, if you would select service provided, select the enrollment date, add any comments that would be helpful. You can ignore this appointment information section. It doesn't really function yet the way we want it to, so we're not training on that. Although technically you could put in the appointment date and time for your own purposes if you'd like. But the referral outcome information is really important. And when you save that, that referral outcome information will tell our core entry specialist if someone contacts them again and says, I didn't get service from the provider, or I showed up and they told me I was ineligible. You can cross-reference what you as the provider actually did with the referral, and that will help our core entry specialists make a different referral to a more appropriate client. So, and then as a data system, we've never really had, as a COC, the ability to analyze referral outcomes, because not all of our direct service providers like HP providers have been able to or been trained to use that outcome feature. And it's a priority for our HUD reporting to be able to track those referral outcomes from now on. So I hope that is valuable information. And now that you have the pending referral, you have access to the client. One thing is, if you go back to their actual client record and go into their profile, client files, this is where our core entry specialist has attached the Excel screening tool that led them to believe they should be referred to you in the first place. That screening tool has some basic household income eligibility information, household size. Is there a veteran in the household? Is the household fleeing domestic violence? What is the household's monthly gross income? What percent of AMI are they at, and FPIG for their county, although for ESG, AMI is what matters. So you could always download and look at this pre-screen as you sit down to do a full assessment with a client. And this is also where you are going to attach a second file when you have completed the HP assessment in Excel before you move forward with a traditional program enrollment. So that's a lot. Let me just pause there. I don't think I see anything in the chat, but let me just touch base with Lauren and make sure.
No, you're good, Jason.
Okay. So now I'm going to show you what the new revised tool looks like. And if you saw the first version of the tool, and my assumption is you received it sometime in February, I hope you'll be a little happy to learn that it's much more streamlined. It was a very long Word document, and what we've tried to do is really just streamline it. So if as I'm displaying it in my screen here, I'll make it a little bigger. Essentially, this tool is a template. So when you download it and double click it or open you're actually making a copy, and you're going to want to save this copy with the client's name. I'm sorry, with the client's ID number. So you would save it with the client ID number because you're making a copy of this template. I'm doing that real quick just so I can demonstrate it. And it starts with some basic instructions. So you already have the client record open in PAHMIS. It's essential that every client has come to you for ESG homeless prevention intake through coordinated entry. It's a requirement of our ESG funding and our COC governing board and our written standards for the continuum of care, that everyone comes through the core entry system first. So if someone presents to you in need of ESG homeless prevention assistance and you don't have a referral in the system from core entry, or you check their client ID and they're either they're not in HMIS, or they're in HMIS without a coordinated entry enrollment from Connect to Home, then you need to connect them with our core entry system, either through 211 or an access site, so that they have a core entry intake before you proceed with this process. If that's something you can either give them the number, give them an access site address, or if your office is open and you're seeing people in person safely, that you could perhaps even let them contact core entry through your administrative phone or office front phone. But they must go through core entry before you do a ESG homeless prevention enrollment. Having confirmed that, and confirming that the client still meets the HUD category 2, 3, or 4 definition of homelessness, which would make them eligible for homeless prevention, it is possible that they entered coordinated entry and were referred to you when they were about to become literally homeless. And by the time you're talking with them, they are literally homeless. In that case, we need to send them back to core entry for our full intake for literal homelessness, so that we can connect them with shelter and some sort of supportive housing and place them on our by name list. But assuming that they remain category 2, 3, or 4, and they are only seeking homeless prevention assistance, then the only other really important note right up front is that if they're category 2, they're going to need the required written documentation. This is the typical documentation from ESG guidelines. Our CE specialists should be encouraging our clients, when they make a referral to you, to have that written documentation. They will make a referral to you. They don't, just so you know, at core entry, we don't confirm documents. We will make a referral to you if they say they have the written documentation, even if we don't have proof of it. But we do inform them that they will need to bring that written documentation with them when they present to you for service. So hopefully they're showing up with the required written documentation, and that they don't have to put that together before you can go through this enrollment. The second thing to do is just just go through the rest of this tool and complete it. When you're done, save it and upload it to HMIS, and then proceed either with an HP program enrollment, or if they are not eligible for your HP project, then using our standard Eastern CoC diversion problem solving conversation, see if there's another way that you can help them to self-resolve. The first version of this tool had a lot of prompts in there about those diversion conversations. It made the form so long. We've taken all that out, but we do have a separate diversion tool. And if you don't have access to that, we will make it available to you. It's really just a guideline for a problem solving conversation. And my guess is that all of you are already naturally more experienced and proficient in that than I am. So, you probably already know how to effectively help divert someone that's not eligible. But first, we need to find out whether they are eligible. So this is simply typing in some basic information. I will go through this as though I were doing it live. Again, at some point, we'll have all this as an automated workflow in PAHMIS. And you can pull some of this if you, from their PAHMIS client record, but we just think it's really important to have it there. I'm just making this up. Was the client referred from court entry? That answer has to be yes, or we need to send them back to court entry first. Is the client fleeing domestic violence, sexual assault? We'll fix that double word there, or human trafficking. Again, these are all pull down options for you to kind of streamline this. Are they going to lose their housing within 21 days or less? So I'm going to make that a no. So if they're not going to lose their housing within 21 days, they're not eligible for ESG unless they've said yes to question 3. In which case you need to, so if the answer to question 3 is no, and the answer to question 4 is no, then you need to attempt diversion or connect them to a different kind of HP project that doesn't have the same eligibility criteria as ESG. We're going to assume this client is not fleeing domestic violence, assault, or trafficking, but is going to lose their housing within 21 days. So again, you would ask how many household members there are, what is the gross monthly household income, what is the household's current county of residence. So we customize this list so that it only includes the 33 counties in the East. And if they give you another county, they're not eligible and they need to be connected with court entry in a county that they're in outside of our system. My understanding is that you already have tools to cross-reference the AMI for each county. Unfortunately, we are not able to code this Excel spreadsheet to it'd be dreamy and I wish we could do it. And actually, again, our HMIS data guru, Mahendra, is working on this with our vendor. It'd be great if you could simply put in the household monthly income, select the county, and there would be a table that would automatically default to tell you if they are under 30 or 50% AMI. We're actually working on that for you, but in the meantime, you'll have to cross-reference either what's available on the HUD website, and that's a link we can share if you don't have it, or whatever. We actually also have, I believe, an Excel spreadsheet of the AMI charts for every county in our continuum, and if that's not already something you have, we can provide that to you as well. So if they're under 30% AMI, then they are going to be eligible for standard ESG, and you can proceed to part 2, which would be the prioritization criteria. But you also want to make sure that that you get down to these questions first. So the governing board wants to make sure that you're aware of whether they have sought any other community resources. You don't actually have to annotate them here. You can just say yes or no. But the whole point is, if you probe a little on this, and again, this might be what you already do, so I apologize if this is common ground for you. But I think the governing board wants to make sure that we know whether someone is going to exclusively need to rely on ESG for homeless prevention, or if they already have other funding sources. That should help you prioritize them at the end, because if they don't have any other choice, then we're going to want to prioritize them a little bit higher. But either way, if you can just answer yes or no to this question, and again, ask them about this, you can document that here, but we're not requiring you to write down every single amount and every single funding source unless it's helpful to you and your colleagues to do that. Now we have to make sure the head of household has provided the necessary documentation. If they have, you can proceed to the assessment part 2. And ideally you would upscan or get electronic copies of those and upload them to the client's record. If they don't have it, you can at least help them obtain it so that we can move them forward to enrollment. So the only other thing is about part 1 is they may be not under 30% AMI, but they would be in this case, but they may, if they are under 50% AMI, so no to 30, yes to 50, they're also eligible, then they're eligible for ESG CV. Of course, if the answer to yes is both, but you only provide ESG CV funding, you can still proceed to part 2. If the answer is no, and you provide ESG CV funding, but they say yes to under 50% AMI, again, you can proceed to part 2. So let's assume that they are under 30%, they are under 50%. And that means we can move to the assessment part 2. This is the actual scoring form. This will tally a prioritization score out of a total of 53 points. And I'll show you at the end how you will use those points to guide your decision to enroll them into your ESG HP project. So first of all, for each question, these are questions you pose directly to the client. How soon are you going to lose your housing? And then what you want to do is, you can see that each of the answers under each question will give different points. You don't have to type in the manual number here. You don't type, okay, 6 days, 5 points. All you do is pull down the menu next to select points, which is right next to every single question, and just select the correct answer. So if they say I'm gonna lose my housing in 7 days, you give them 4 points. How many times have they experienced little homelessness? If they say 1 in the past 3 years, you give them 3 points. And you proceed through all of these questions the same exact way. These are all required and approved scoring criteria questions by the CoC governing board, including disabling condition, eviction, criminal record for arson, drug dealing or manufacture, or felony offense against persons or property, a registered sex offender, at least 1 dependent child under age 6. Are you a single parent with at least 1 minor dependent child? Do you have 5 or more household members? Do you needing a mix of bedrooms? Is there a veteran in their household? This one I want to stop at, because if the answer is yes, you still want to award them the 3 points. However, if you want to check their client record in PAHMIS and see if they've been directly referred to an SSVF provider, the governing board would like all veterans in need of homeless prevention assistance to be connected directly to SSVF for homeless prevention funding that is dedicated for veterans and active military. However, I think what I would do here is clarify whether they're already connected to a veteran service provider. And hopefully you found that out up here in question 10, because they would have told you that, where you may see the veteran status in their client dashboard when you look at it before you begin this. But essentially, before we enroll them into an ESG project, we want to know if they've been considered for and are enrolled in SSVF homeless prevention. It's fine if they tell you up front or right here, yes, I'm receiving homeless prevention assistance through SSVF, but it's not enough. And I was told to apply to you, or I was referred to you. Then you can proceed. We just want to make sure that they've been connected with an SSVF provider at some point. Again, if we score points, 3 points here if they are fleeing domestic violence, sexual assault, or human trafficking. But when you ask that question up front, please don't ask it again. Just, you already know the answer. If the answer is yes or no, please just add the 3 points or not. If the head of household is age 24 or less, you would give them points because they're a transition age youth head of household. If their monthly income is 0, you would give them an extra 5 points. And if you're currently at risk of losing a tenant-based housing subsidy or subsidized building or unit in a subsidized building or unit, you'd get 3 points. When you are done asking all 24 questions and selecting the right point totals, you are going to automatically see their prioritization score calculated. This is not a box you can actually try to, it's locked, so you can't accidentally delete the score or change the scoring criteria. But in the end, they're going to have a score between 0 and 53. The higher the score, the more likely we should be prioritizing for HP enrollment. So let me pause there. Again, I don't see any chat questions, but are there any questions about the tool so far before we finish with how to interpret the score?
There are no questions in the chat, but if folks want to put their questions in the chat, go ahead.
Yes, please. So after a long conversation and really good, thoughtful discussion with the governing board, the original version of the tool was modified dramatically, because originally it essentially said if the total point score is a certain range or higher, you would enroll them in a medium-term assistance. And if it were a certain score, you would enroll them in a short-term assistance. And if it were a really low score, you wouldn't enroll them at all. However, the purpose of this assessment tool is not to make it hard for people to get connected to ESG HP funding. It's just to give you guidance on how high you should prioritize them if you have limited resources. And again, we are fortunate to be in a brief moment that I don't think I've ever seen in 15 years of working in our sector as a technical assistance provider, which is we have more money to spend rather than less, but with still not an endless supply. So this prioritization system may not be as relevant at this moment as it's going to be perhaps a year from now, but it's still important to use the prioritization score as a guide to determine who you are going to give assistance to at what level to prevent them from becoming literally homeless. So of course, the higher the score, the higher priority. Most ESG prevention funding, you have access to 2 forms of rental assistance as defined in the ESG guidelines. You have short-term rental assistance, which is up to 3 months. And you have medium-term rental assistance, which is 4 to 24 months for ESG standard and 4 to 12 months for ESG CV round 2. So you would use that score to say, I think this household needs short-term assistance. They have a low score with 2 months of rent subsidy. They should be fine. That's how I'm going to proceed to enroll them and manage their subsidy distribution. Or you might say, okay, I think this household is really going to be struggling. Their score is pretty high. They have some significant barriers to paying their rent, and I'm going to provide them with medium-term rental assistance, perhaps up to 24 months if I can, or 12 months if I have CV2. So that's really the purpose here. And so what we'd like you to do here is just make an annotation, if you would, of what you intend to do. You might say, I'm short-term 2 to 3 months, or medium-term 12 months, or 12 to 16 months. But this is a historical record so that if anyone else in your agency needs to review why you scored someone a certain way, why you're providing them assistance, maybe you're handing off a case to another case manager, or taking, going on out of the office for a week, that they could always go back, download this, look at it, and understand why you made the decision to enroll them at a certain level. No matter what you do with this score, always refer to the most recent emergency solution grant program guidelines. This is not the detailed guide to HP program enrollment, nor is it the full detailed annotation of eligible use of funds. So always refer back to that. But once you've completed this tool and saved it, the last step is simply to upload it into the client file in HMIS, so it's in their client record. And again, you do that by going to the client dashboard, searching for the client if their dashboard is no longer loaded, going to client files under the profile menu, clicking plus add file. You would give the document a name, ideally client ID 244018. HP assessment, and then you could choose the file from your computer to upload it. Remember that it looks like it's uploaded. It is not uploaded until you hit save. And then you can see in their client files, they have 2 files, the original court entry screening here and your new here. At this point, you would proceed with doing the rest of a homeless prevention project enrollment in HMIS, just as you would with any other client. I'm not able to demonstrate that because my role or my job today is to have shown you how this new assessment tool works. But I believe at this point we might even have Tony Diaz on, but certainly they could answer questions for you about what comes next. But what comes next is the way you would do an enrollment into your HP project, a new enrollment, just as you would. Nothing's changed there. I'm sorry, you're looking at a CE enrollment because I'm logged in as a court entry user. But you would do the enrollment into your HP project and manage that client and then exit that client as you would have done yesterday. Nothing's changed there. So that's the tutorial. That's the overview of the tool. Happy to answer any questions either through the chat or at this point, since I'm done sharing my screen. If you just want to unmute and ask, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Jason, there's one thing I want to say, and I'm sorry if you said it and I missed it. With regard to the score, there is a minimum score threshold to receive ESG funding, right? It was like 15 points.
No, that was asked to remove that from the governing board approved version as far as, and so what I just showed you is what we have been approved to and distributed to do. If that needs to be put back in, that was an update that we can get from the governing board and distribute in the future. I'm not aware of that. I believe it was intended to be removed. That's my understanding.
Okay, we can circle back. I think they wanted to keep that in. So.
Well, if there's no other questions, we can certainly end the training and the Q&A. Again, please use this form and please use this assessment tool as is, please, and follow the procedures through this training. And if there are any updates to the tool, you will receive those directly through the CoC mailing list. So thank you all for your time. I appreciate it.